Satnam yogis and yoginis, hello and welcome back to another video. Today we will talk about the 2 laws of a yoga teacher. And this is not only for yoga teachers. I would say that this is a general law for any kind of spiritual teacher, but it could also be applicable also to therapists and actually teachers of any kind in a way. But let's face it first from the perspective that we have these teachings from actually Kundalini Yoga, and then we will see how classical yoga speaks about it, and we will connect it to the different realms and the different levels on the physical and emotional and the mental and the spiritual level. So we're going to build up on the concept, on the idea, but we're going to start simple. So there is this idea from the level 1 of Kundalini Yoga teacher training that we talk about the 2 laws that we need to bear in mind as yoga teachers, which are the law of sustenance and the law of deliverance. Now, what does this mean? The law of deliverance means that we are meant to deliver the student towards the infinity. So our purpose is not to gather students, collect students, and make them be faithful to us as human beings, and just let them pay attention to what we do, what we teach, and us individually, personally. But actually, we are more like pointers, like, look at there, right? Pointing towards the moon, right? Look at the moon. There's this beautiful saying I heard some time ago: when the wise man points to the moon, the fool looks at the finger, right? So we don't want the students looking at our fingers. We are imperfect beings. And so, if they are focusing too much on what we do and what we say, then it's going to disappoint them at one point or another. And some would say that this is actually the one of the purposes of the spiritual teacher, that is going to disappoint you at some point. But the thing is, rather than disappointing, let's point towards the place that they are never going to be disappointed. So the law of deliverance is to deliver them to the source of the teachings. This is kind of like, going to the church and you see the priest in the middle. And traditionally, the priest would be speaking in Latin, which nobody understands, or rarely would somebody understand that. And they are telling you that you have to, confess for your sins to be cleared so that you can go to heaven. And so you have to go through that little passage of that priest. And now we are in a different age. Actually, that was actually a very long way ago. Yeah, now priests don't speak in Latin. Now you can speak to them and they can point to you, to the Christ and to the teachings. So they can also do this practice of law of deliverance. But traditionally it would be like that. You would have a teacher, a guru, a sensei, a priest, or somebody that you get attached to, and you depend on them for you to be liberated. And this first law is saying quite the opposite. So make sure that when you are teaching, you are doing the pointing and don't let them give too much focus and attention to you. Which doesn't mean that I can do whatever I want because they are not looking at me. It means also personal responsibility. And we have to be coherent with what we teach and what we practice. But from the perspective of our relationship to the student is to point towards the infinite. So that's it. Now, this is the law of deliverance. The other law is the law of sustenance. And the law of sustenance is that we are creating a certain trust with the student. And when we gain the trust of the student by our words and our actions, once you gain this trust, we should not lose it. So we should keep that trust and make sure that we don't betray the trust from the student. So this is about keeping up the trust. But there is another level to this keeping up. Because us as teachers, our duty is to help the student to keep up as well. It's not that we are responsible for them, but this is what we do, right? The student will go through their own challenges, and we are there to support them, to help them to keep up their practice and their commitment so that they can get to the liberation. And that can be done in a few ways, but basically, I'll go into that in a moment. Yeah, but basically, the idea of keeping up sustenance, is to keep up your relationship to the student as clear as possible, as neutral as possible. There is this concept of being personally impersonal, but at the same time, helping the student to keep up their own practice and keep up their own discipline. So I'm slowing down because I'm remembering another concept that we have from Karam Kriya, and that is like when we are as therapists, when we are in a relationship with a client, there's generally two ways to go. Sometimes the client just needs support, and when they are going through some issues and they are working on themselves and they are working on whatever issue they came to therapy for, then you can either support them, and that's just about like a emotional or energetic hug to hold them while they are going through their issues, and you may be bringing some of the teachings, but it's more about helping them hold themselves, and sometimes we need to hold them as well, right? And that's one path, and sometimes we need to confront them, and that's an actual whole 4 steps thing, poke, provoke, confront, and elevate, which we may have talked about this in the past in other videos in the channel. So sometimes we need to poke and provoke and confront with what's happening. Sometimes we just need to give support and holding them, And so that's very interesting, because if we think about deliverance and sustenance, these 2 laws, deliverance is like pointing to the infinite, is like, don't get attached to me, go over, And that means also we don't get attached to the student, because our hope and our prayer is that the student becomes the next teacher. So they are not going to be always, we don't have to hold their hands, hopefully, So we don't have to carry them in our bags, in our back. We don't have to hold their hands. Sometimes they can just walk by themselves, and that's actually wonderful when we can get to that stage. So that means we need to not attach ourselves to the student. So that's the deliverance part. So letting go. And the sustenance is the keeping up, and keeping up the relationship, and keeping up the trust, and keeping up the practice, and keeping up. So that's kind of like a holding, because you have to hold to the practice, So that's a holding thing. So there is this combination of what you hold onto and what you let go. And so in the consultation, in a therapy context, it would be whether they need to be held, so that's holding, or whether you need to let them go and say, and provoke and confront and say, look, are you sure you want to carry on doing this? And you're also, what are you confronting them with the things that they are attached to? So also practicing of letting go, but on themselves, right? So you can hold on to them or confront them on the letting go on themselves. So this is the 2 aspects, the 2 forces, which there's a lot of videos on the law of attraction, but maybe we should talk also about the law of repulsion, right? We need to let go of things, and sometimes we need to repel forces to free ourselves from those attachments. And we know from Buddhism how much suffering comes from what we get attached to and the things that we desire. So these 2 aspects, holding on or letting go. Now, so we see already this is from a perspective of a teacher, a yoga teacher, a spiritual teacher, if you wish. You could also say that from any kind of teacher. If you are teaching in primary school, there is a relationship that you have with the kids, and you are serving as a reference for what they are learning. So there's going to be some attachment and some holding on, to them. But then also there has to be some non-attachment and letting go, in the way that there is this sentence, don't do for your students what they can do for themselves. If you're teaching primary kids, you don't want to do the things for them. You want to help them achieve their own capacity to deal with life and solve problems and manage relationships and everything they have to learn. And hopefully they can do that by themselves by the time they finish the education. So our practice will also be oriented in that way of letting them go so that they can do things by themselves. So don't do for them what they can do on their own. Me as a father, I also keep this in mind very, very often. No, my daughter is asking me for something. Should I do it for her? It might be easier. It might be faster. We might get there, earlier. We might not be late to wherever we are going. But it is my service to her if I allow her to do it by herself, and I just support her in her doing it, and I let it go. So this practice is for teachers, is for parents, is for therapists. As we are seeing, we are expanding, right, the group. And I wanted to also connect to this concept that we can find in classical teachings. And I was reflecting this morning upon the Yoga Sutras. We did a course on this last year, well, now 2 years ago. And it was a very deep course on the different parts of the Yoga Sutras. And I remember when, at the very beginning, when Patanjali talks about the chitta vrittis, these movements, fluctuations of the consciousness, and how they have to get to nirodha, this cessation, this stopping and mastery over the fluctuations of consciousness. And he said, look, the mastery of nirodha depends on two aspects. That's abhyasa and vairagya. And if you have read the sutras or you remember that video, we were talking how abhyasa is the practice. And that's the thing you need to keep up, you need to hold on to. So you can see the law of sustenance being applied here. You have to sustain your practice and sustain your commitment and your discipline. Abhyasa. And vairagya is letting go. And we need to let go is like non-attachment, to be desireless. And we are doing our practice of yoga, and through yoga we're going to have a number of some experiences. Sometimes we have unusual experiences, sometimes spiritual experiences, and sometimes some special abilities develop, like the 3rd chapter of the Yoga Sutras when it talks about the cities, these different cities that manifest, these powers. But he's saying, look, don't worry about that. This is part of the path. This is part of the way. We are walking in this direction. These things happen, just letting it go. So this is kind of the holding on to, not attachment, holding on to, but also letting go on the spiritual dimension. I hold on to my practice, I hold on to my commitment, but whatever experience comes through, I just let it go. Let it go, abhyasa and vairagya. So Patanjali talks about this on this level, on a spiritual level. And I was thinking, well, that's got to be also on the physical and the emotional and the mental, because everything is connected. So physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. I just did a short a few days ago on breath and how connects all of this. So whenever we see something on one level, we often can also identify it in the other level. So I was reflecting on the other. So let's see the physical aspect. When we are doing our asana, when we are doing our yoga postures, we need to hold on to it. We need to be in the posture. And sometimes the posture is, we struggle. Maybe we are in downward facing dog, the triangle pose. And maybe we need to be there for 3, 4, 5 minutes. And the body struggles with it and we need to hold on. So we need to be sustaining ourselves. Keep up. We say keep up, right? And that's necessary for us to go through whatever we have to go through. But at the same time, there is also a letting go happening. So abhyasa and vairagya. There is the letting go of the tension, letting go of the resistance that we have, letting go of the blockages, letting go of the mental issues that arise because we are in the posture and the body is doing something but the mind doubts it. So letting go of the doubts. So the physical body is releasing tension, releasing blockages, and is healing itself by holding on to something as well. So it's how interesting that it's actually a combination of both. It's not that we sometimes have to practice one or the other, but both are practiced at the same time. And in the physical level, it's quite obvious. You're holding the posture, letting go of the tension. And there is a certain amount of tension to be in the posture, but can you let go of that other tension that is just blocking you up? So that's very interesting. So that's on the physical level. And if we go to the emotional level, well, we often talk about how on the emotions, there's two things that we can do. You either express your emotions or you contain the emotion. Now, there is proper, healthy, dharmic way of containing and expressing, and there is karmic way of containing and expressing. You may be expressing as a tantrum, right, and vomiting your anger to somebody else, or you may be containing as a repression. That's not healthy. So generally we get into trouble when we contain what needs to be expressed, when we express what needs to be contained, and how do we contain and do we express those things. But that's what we do with emotions. And look, containment, it's about holding. Yeah, so holding it, like holding the practice or holding the discipline, right? And expression is about letting it go. Because the emotional expression is not just so that everybody knows that I'm angry, is I'm expressing whatever emotion is coming up as a way of liberating the energy that has been building up, and I transform it. We say emotion to devotion. So you transform that emotion into something higher. So containment and expression, and holding on and letting go. So that's the emotional, and then we would also do this on the mental, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And in the mental is like we need to hold on to thoughts when we are, we do this a lot when we meditate, but actually we should be able to do this during the day, all the time. Can we focus on one thing? Can we concentrate the mind and be stable and steady and still on whatever we are thinking on, without distractions, without getting bored and going to somewhere else? That level of focus, that takes a lot of attention and keeping up. Yeah, it's like commitment, it's holding on. So this is all connected in this focusing of the mind. And there is, at the same time, in order to, as well, this focusing of the mind, there is all these other thoughts that are coming around, and we need to be able to let them go. So being able to eliminate those thoughts which are not relevant to what I'm focusing on now, at the same time of being focused. So being focused and also letting go. So how interesting, sustaining and delivering, holding on and letting go, and the different levels, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, they are all very connected to these two forces. What am I holding on to and what am I letting go? So just something to reflect upon. I hope you enjoyed this short video today. I was quite condensed, but with the essence. We may do another video on poke, provoke, confront, elevate someday. I'm reflecting upon that, and we have a conversation coming up, and we will come back to the meaning of sounds very soon as well, because I'm back in more stable life. I've been traveling a lot, but hopefully I can start doing more regular schedule as well. But for now, thank you very much everyone for watching and subscribing, and every member of the channel, and see you next time. Salam.